Everyone who registered will get a copy of the recording along with any slides tomorrow, day after the presentation. So before we get started, I would like to give a quick shout out to our partners for helping make this happen, and there's a few of them, so bear with me. Association Member Trust, DCM Associates, Focus New Jersey, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, our friends at Nisavacia, the NJBIA HR Support Center, New Jersey Business Magazine, and New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group. Really thank you all for supporting this important work. We really can't do this, put on these presentations without you. Another quick bit of housekeeping, in case you're new, just a quick shout out to my fellow not-for-profit leadership team members and co-chairs. So Dawn Dougherty from the Society of Prevention for Teen Suicide, Sally Glick of Sobel and Company, Gary Pollack of Gomo Health, and Gerald Tayea of the Food Bank of South Jersey. Hopefully I pronounced your name right, Gerald. And Mary Lonergan of the Covenant House. Got it. And now I'll just turn it over to the BIA for a quick word from Betty.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for starting us off. So good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for supporting this council. I'm Betty Boros, and I'm one of the executive leaders here at NJBIA. And as Joe mentioned, this session is being recorded. Attendees will receive an email tomorrow or the next day with the recording. And depending on what time we finish, we may have some time for networking at the end of the meeting. But there is much to cover. So we're thrilled to see this group assist our many not-for-profit members and continue to foster collaboration with our corporate members. We're so happy to have such a strong leadership team guiding the way. They're a great group. For those of you who are new to the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, we're the largest statewide business association in the country, representing New Jersey businesses and offering customer development opportunities, visibility through events, magazine ads, or our podcast and TV shows, and money-saving discounts and stuff you're probably already paying for, like payroll, healthcare, a 401k solution, and HR support. If you're interested in more information on us, I'll drop the website into the chat along with my contact info. Feel free to be in touch, and we can get you whatever you need. And also feel free to drop your contact information into the chat so that others can see who's here and we can keep the networking going. And one last reminder to switch your view from gallery to speaker. The directions to do that are in the chat. And with that, I will turn it over to the wonderful Joe Perez, who will take it from here.
Thank you so much, Betty. And I think in the chat, your contact information is in there. So everyone on the call should be able to gather that information. Please reach out to the NJBIA if you have any questions or concerns or any of the things that Betty had, or need any of the things that Betty had mentioned. They're a wonderful group of people and they're always happy to help. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about the Not-for-Profit Council, which is comprised of not-for-profits and business leaders of all backgrounds who convene and engage in meaningful dialogue, share successful business practices, and develop programs that support strategic growth within New Jersey. During this session, we invite you to please place any questions that you may have in the chat box. We will synthesize these questions and pose them to our speakers following the presentation. Also, feel free to add to the chat your name and contact information so that we continue the networking afterward. All of these things are an essential part of what we're doing here, so please take advantage of it by not being anonymous. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Jocelyn Gilman, Management Business Development Consultant from JSG Consultants. Jocelyn is a British-born attorney who, after moving to the United States, worked as a sales and marketing director in the pharmaceutical and medical industry for over 20 years. However, in 2009, she decided to follow her heart and entered the not-for-profit sector, where we all play, simply to make a positive impact in the world. She's held a variety of professional positions, including working as an executive director, foundation director, and chief development director at several not-for-profits, including some that you may have heard of, the American Red Cross, Jewish Federation, and Habitat for Humanity. She's also spearheaded diversity, equity, and inclusion, access and belonging programs, and created the first disaster spiritual care team for the American Red Cross. Most importantly, she transitioned to become a consultant for both industry and not-for-profits. So hopefully I did you some justice there, Jocelyn. Please take us away into your wonderful presentation, and we look forward to hearing.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that NJBIA does for everybody. I have been involved with NJBIA for many years and was part of their nonprofit council when it started. So I really appreciate the honor of being invited here today. And I'm going to share my screen so that we can talk about the art of grant making. I hope that as the morning goes along, that you really gain at least one golden nugget from what I'm going to share, and hopefully several. Just really briefly about my present position as a consultant. As Joe said, I've been involved in diversity, equity, inclusion, access and belonging. I offer business development, interim leadership roles. I do leadership staff and board ambassador training, fundraising and giving programs, strategic planning, and community and relationship building. And I think today, as we go through these slides, you're going to see that all those skill sets actually feed into the art of grant writing. So I would really encourage you not just to look at grant writing in isolation, but truly look at yourself and what you bring to the table. And then when you're looking, what to consider when you look for a grant, how to write hopefully a successful grant, and then also consider the reporting, the following up, and again, that really key piece of relationship building. What I would like to do, first of all, is actually take a few moments for us all to settle into the space and to also offer a land acknowledgement as we sit here in New Jersey. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held in the traditional ancestral lands of the Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape Indians of New Jersey, the Ramapo Lenape Indian Nation, and the Powhatan Lenape Nation. And I pay my respects to the elders, both past and present. And I think as we all enter into this space, I think it might help us all, including me, to take a minute or two to really just to breathe. I sometimes think that we all forget to do that as we get caught up in our everyday. So before we step into the world of grant writing, I'd maybe ask us all to just get a little bit comfortable where we're sitting, gently plant our feet on the ground, sit up a little bit, maybe roll our shoulders back. Feel free to join me, and to roll our shoulders forward a little. Okay. And then I'm going to ask you, either you can close your eyes, you can just gaze down gently at the floor, or keep looking at the boxes on the screen. And just for a minute or so, I'm going to encourage you to take some deep breaths. We'll start with 3 really deep cleansing breaths. And then I'm going to just walk you through some breathing in for 4 and out for 4. So first of all, just really deep breaths in and blowing out through your mouth. So we're going to breathe in through the nose and out. Just let everything go as we enter this sacred space. Breathe in again. Just release and let it go. And breathe in again. Release and let go. And now I'll count just for a minute. Let's just breathe in for 4 and out for 4, in through our nose and out through our nose. So in, 2, 3, 4, and release. 2, 3, 4. And in, bring more light, openness to learning, and out all the things that don't serve us, all the worries and fears. And in, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. Breathing in 2, 3, 4, and release. 2, 3, 4. And finally in. 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3. And just take 2 or 3 more cleansing breaths in and out. And in and out. And finally in and out. So welcome. It is such a pleasure to be with you all today. Hopefully we're not as nervous as we were thinking about grant making, which can always cause some concern, some intrepidation. So let us enter the sacred space of grant writing. I'm going to share a little bit about my background, which Joe kindly mentioned, but I'm sharing it to really share skill sets that I feel I've gained along the way that specifically address and lead into the art of grant writing. So as an attorney, I was able to do a lot of research into areas, a lot of writing, a lot of drafting, proofreading, and I'd also say relationship building as I worked both internally with colleagues and externally with clients, or when I was trying to find further information with others in the field. And also had a great understanding of different multiple issues. There most probably wasn't a day went by when something new would come across my desk. And I would say, think about all the skill sets you have in those areas, because all of those areas help when you're writing grants. As a sales and marketing director, it wasn't always the product and the services I had, but where could I find the right organization or corporation to work with? I needed those synergies, those connections. I wanted to develop relationships and networks. It was important that I could fulfill my client's vision, goal, and mission. And again, that is the same set of skill sets that are so important when we come to grant writing. Who is the grantor? What do they want to offer out into the world? If it's a corporation, are they looking for employee volunteer opportunities? Are they looking to look good within their community and serve their community? Are there certain areas that they really want to stand out in, and that a collaboration with a nonprofit really helps them along the way? And so again, all those relationships, which feeds again into fundraising, being a fundraising professional, being donor-centric, sitting and listening, that active listening. What does our donor want to do? What's the legacy that they want to leave behind? And how can I, as a nonprofit, help step into that space and help them fulfill their needs? And also, what are they passionate about? Because what they're passionate about hopefully aligns what we as a nonprofit are trying to do. And then I was fortunate enough to be a foundation director, to sit on the other side as the grantor. And again, I'm looking for the right organization to partner with. I would say that there is no foundation that does not want to give out money. Each and every foundation wants to do so. It has a limited pot, and therefore it wants to ensure, A, that the money it gives will really create an impact, and B, that it really is fulfilling their needs. So again, always remember being really centric towards what the grantor is looking for. As an executive director, it was building on those internal and external relationships, which I would share is exactly what you're doing in the grant writing space. You're really developing the relationships you want with your grantors. As a chief development director, well, everything fundraising, from grants and getting major gift donors, etc. But all of these skill sets, as you can see, will lead into this grant writing process. I've covered a little bit of what I do as a consultant, but I've also ended with a couple of things that might be somewhat surprising to you all. I actually am an end-of-life doula, but I'd actually say I'm more of a life doula, how to live the best life we can. And I'm also an energy healer. But what I think both of those skill sets do, it enables me to be an active listener. I was just talking to one of the council members who talked about wanting to step into the space of actively listening. That is so important when you're writing a grant. It's so important to listen. What does the grantor want? What are they saying? What are their needs? And can I create a safe and brave space for that person to step in, for my colleagues to step in, so that ultimately I end up with the best grant that I can write? So again, look at all your skill sets and see how it fits into this world of grant writing. So to go into this world, how to find the right grant. So again, please don't try to be a round peg in a square hole. Sometimes I think we are so eager, so anxious, so willing and wanting to fulfill our mission. We look at the mission of a grantor and we try and fit in, oh yes, that sort of is right. I have this program, maybe I can adjust it a little to fit into their needs. I would strongly suggest that most probably 9 times out of 10, the grantor will see that really that true synergy isn't there. And remember, you want to succeed as much as they want you to succeed. So I'd really say be very truthful and honest with the work that you do and how does it fit in to that mission or need of your grantor. The other thing I'd say as well is look to see, do you sit in a special area? Do you support and empower women and girls? Are you working in the space that looks after and supports minorities, those who are underserved, veterans? You know, see if there's certain areas that make you truly fit into somebody's mission. And then the other thing is to really look broadly at your mission. So I think there was somebody signed up from Habitat, which is one of the organizations I'd work for. When you look at Habitat, they don't just build homes. They develop communities. They really support people's financial security. You have to have sweat equity in the house. You have to take financial, you learn about how to have a budget, how to have a mortgage, etc. So there's so many other pieces to that mission that perhaps it does broaden your reach into looking for grants. I represent at the moment a collective of over 28 organizations in the food insecurity space. But it isn't just the day-to-day providing affordable, healthy food. It truly looks at social determinants of health. What are the health issues that are caused due to food insecurity? And how can we therefore, through food, begin to resolve that problem? It looks at how do people access social and health benefits? How do people access actual benefits that are offered by the government? How do we create financial security so people can get life-sustaining jobs, which allow them not just to rent somewhere, but to also feed themselves and their family and get health access? So again, be true to your mission, but really look at all the different aspects of your mission too. I'd encourage you to know your funder, do some research, look on their website. Who are their partners? Who do they presently fund? Do you have a previous relationship with that funder? Does somebody within your organization have those connections? And truly look at their goals and their mission. How do they want to come to their community? And are they very community centric? Do they look at specific counties in New Jersey? Are they really focused on certain populations? So again, that research, finding out who they truly are is so important when you're looking for the right grant and the right partnership. And then where would you go and look to find a grant? Talk to the board. Board members are most probably members of more than one board. They come from perhaps large corporations that can, again, help you access different grant opportunities. Look at your partners, talk to partners. Who do they go to? I think sometimes everybody feels this is a very competitive environment, but I think truly actually together we can come together and help each other. Ultimately, the aim of every nonprofit should be to finally fulfill and address the issues that exist to the point that those issues no longer are causing the problems that we're trying to solve. Look at your partner websites. They often honor some of the partners and supporters and funders. Candid has a great foundation directory. I also found a group called Grantsmanship Center. You can home in and go to New Jersey, and they will tell you the top foundations in New Jersey, community foundations, corporations. Believe it or not, as well as going on Google and looking at websites, maybe pop into the library. Your reference librarian may be a great source of ways to access and find out about foundations. Some sites you need to be a partner or a member. A library might often have access to those sites. And I'm going to encourage you all to maybe share some ideas in the chat. Where were some good places that you found when you were looking for grants? Again, I think we're in a world of sharing and being collaborative. So I please encourage you to do that, and hopefully you can save that chat afterwards. And then another thing to consider is where am I going for my grants? Am I looking at corporations? Am I looking at foundations? Am I looking at family foundations, community foundations, faith-based groups, government, universities, hospitals? So again, trying to find those true synergies that working together, we're going to make a greater difference. I've put down here invitation only as well. So don't be turned off if, especially I think with larger corporations and larger foundations, they say you cannot send in a request. This is by invitation only. So they can't invite you in if they don't know that you exist. So I'll use an example of a couple of months ago, came across a large foundation in New Jersey. We were not part of their inner circle. And so I decided to look for the person who was who ran the foundation, but also a program director. And I wrote a very nice email, short and sweet, just saying I'd like to share a little bit of the work that we do, feeling it really is something that would support your mission. And then a paragraph, a brief, very succinct, but I hope passionate paragraph to share the work that we do and say, perhaps you could find a few moments to talk to us to see if there is the synergy between us. And we actually got invited in for a meeting. So never be put off by invitation only. If you share who you are and tell people what you do, then remember they're people that you're writing to. And if something connects, then you may be indeed invited in. And then just think about the type of grant you're looking for, the type of assistance. Is it just technical assistance? Do you want something where there's a little more flexibility into reporting? Are you looking for leadership skills and training? Are you looking at capacity building? We should always hopefully be looking for unrestricted funding. That's ideal, right? So that would be wonderful. And also now there's a new area of trust capital. So Bank of America, for example, are offering grants where they are going to give you a lump sum of money and say, we trust you. We know enough about you. We've done our due diligence. We've asked enough questions and feel comfortable with you that we are giving you this grant and we are trusting you to use it in the best way possible, rather than restricting an organization in the way that they can use funds. So again, just some things to consider when you're trying to find the right grant for you. Some questions that you could ask of yourself. Grant writing is not a quick task. Grant writing takes time. It could take 10, 15, 20 hours of your time. It depends. So think about, is this time well spent? If you're a general fundraiser and you're looking at a grant for $5,000, do you want to spend 2 or 3 days writing a grant, all the reporting, etc. afterwards? Or would you actually be better to look for 5 new major gift donors, making some calls? So really think about, when you're writing a grant, how much money am I going to get? And that's an important piece. To be chasing 15, 20 grants for $2,500, $5,000 may not necessarily be your time well spent. And I think sometimes we feel we can have a kind of boilerplate type of grant. Oh, I'll just plug this answer into here and the same answer into there. One thing I've noticed and heard from grantors, try and be really specific, really, really personalize the grant that you're writing. So just be aware of time spent and how much you're applying for. One thing I discovered recently, I work for a collective that is in the world of food insecurity, and we partnered with a university. We needed to create shared measurements and work on outcomes and create a baseline for the work that we're doing and the changes we're going to make. It turned out the money actually went to the university for their staff, but actually the gain that we got as an organization, because it was actually going to start research, sharing the gaps that existed, helping us with our measurements and our outcomes. That was good for us. That was a great space. But sometimes the organization itself needs money. So just be mindful of that. And also, if money does go to a partner, there may be some way of splitting that money 50-50. So just something else to look at. Consider whether it's a nationwide grant or even a global opportunity. Do you need to stay more local? Do you have a better chance to succeed in a smaller pool where you truly are touching the community where the organization lives and works and their employees play? So I think those are things to consider as well when you're looking to really be as successful as possible. Do I know the funder? Again, better to cultivate existing relationships rather than going in cold. That is not to say you wouldn't go in cold, as I shared, even when there's invitation only, go for it. You know, why not? You've got nothing to lose. If you don't ask, you gain nothing. But I definitely try to look at that low-hanging fruit and then ask questions. Don't be frightened to reach out to a foundation. We're people. I was a foundation director. I encourage all potential grantees to reach out to me and talk to me. Find out what they're looking for. Find out if there is that synergy. Look at their funding history. Who have they funded? What have they funded? What are they doing? Really get to know your funder. Writing a grant. This is so important to review the request for proposal and to follow the directions. Please answer all the questions and submit all the financials required. If you do not do that, your grant proposal with all those hours spent will most probably just have to be put on the side. What I do, I take the actual request for proposal and I paste all the questions into a Word document and answer each one. And then as I'm going through those answers, I'm trying not to duplicate, because sometimes we can say the same thing in different ways. So I just find that really helpful to kind of take those questions and really ensure that I'm answering them. And again, talk to the funder. If you have questions, if you're not sure about something, talk to them. I encouraged all my potential grantees to send me a draft. That most probably will only happen in smaller foundations. But if you submit a request as the final proposal, it cannot be changed. So the foundation that I represented, the Jewish Women's Foundation of New Jersey, empowered women and girls. It could only look at work for women and girls. If somebody did work for women and girls, and let's say men and boys, and did not delineate the request for a grant, I actually couldn't even look at the grant. It had to focus in solely on the work that they did with women and girls. So if you can submit a draft or have somebody look over it, because again, the foundation director knows what they're looking for. They know their trustees. So I'd encourage you to really, really submit a draft if you can. And be a passionate, passionate storyteller. State what you do and why you're doing it. Give the history of the organization. On my LinkedIn, I say, if I make somebody cry, I'm most probably 90+% there to actually pulling them in to what I want. It's important to state what you do and why, and how you address and understand the issues and fulfill mission. You are trying to create impact and trying to ensure that you're competitive amongst all the other potential grantees who are putting in a grant. There is a wonderful TED talk by a gentleman called Simon Sinek, and I would recommend that is 17 minutes well worth listening to. He creates the golden circle of how to touch hearts and minds. And at the very center of his circle is share with somebody why you exist. We often tell people what we do, but we forget to tell them the why. He says the why should be at the center. Around the why should be how do you fulfill mission? And then around that outside should be what are you actually doing? So think about how you're phrasing and really sharing why you're doing it. And no technical language or acronyms. The American Red Cross, we had a book on acronyms, which is great when you learn them all, but when you're writing to somebody and they do not understand what the letters mean. So be really, really careful when you write to somebody. Make it very, you'll see at the bottom, clear, concise, and compelling, and understandable. Do you have a strategic plan that your organization is working on? Can it be realized? Are you capable, knowledgeable, forward-thinking? Are you showing that your programs are replicable? And are you collaborating? I think that's so important nowadays. Ensure that you maybe pull in other groups. You do one thing, but by pulling in 2 or 3 other nonprofits, you're actually really creating a very sound grant application. And then share how you're going to use the funds and can you leverage your funds. So if you got funding, let's say $10,000 for the year, what are you going to do when the $10,000 runs out? So try and share a little bit of forward thinking with your grantor that you may be going to take these funds and leverage them to get other funding, to develop a program. So try and always have that thought in your mind. And the last piece, which is maybe my legal side, but check the word limits. If they tell you 500 words, please do not do 501. If they tell you use a particular font, please use that font and that size. Look at the spacing they may ask you to do. And I would say proofread, proofread, and proofread. Make sure that there are no mistakes. Make sure your grammar is good. And I would say, give that grant proposal to your mother, to your uncle, to an aunt, to a cousin, to somebody who knows nothing about the organization. And when they read it, they can say, well, hang on a minute, it sounds like a great program, but I don't even know what you do. So although we're so entrenched in what we do, we may not be sharing that story. I actually use my daughter as my proofreader. And I always come back with a document full of red lines. It's a little bit frustrating, but honestly, it's so helpful. So again, ask a colleague to read it, but also ask somebody outside of the organization. And again, being clear, concise, and compelling is so important. Metrics, evaluations, outcomes, impacts. Please make sure you know how you are going to evaluate your program, how you are going to prove that you have achieved the goals that you set out to resolve. Did you establish a baseline with agreed metrics that this is where we're beginning? And in a year with the funding, we want to be here. We want to have touched so many people. We want to have provided so many meals. We want to have built so many homes. We want to have addressed some of the issues around blood pressure or whatever it may be. But you need some established baselines. And can you and how do you show that you've made a difference? Sometimes it's hard. At the American Red Cross in our disaster area, we would step in and help somebody and then show them other resources, but we wouldn't necessarily follow those individuals who weren't able to. It was hard to prove that we'd made a difference. So think about ways in which you can show that. And do you have a test sample to follow? So with the collective, that's looking at food insecurity and really trying to address the root causes so that in 10 years' time, people are going to be more food secure. Maybe we need to take 10 families at the beginning of our 10-year program and follow them. They become our test sample. And so at the end, we can say, you know, when we help them with their workforce development, we offered jobs, when we offered training, when we ensured they had affordable, healthy food, look where they are 10 years on. So consider whether you have a test group. And then look at the best practices of organizations with similar mission and similar size. How do they measure their outcomes? What's their impact? What are those kind of flashing boxes that you see? You know, we have impacted X number of people. We have made this change. So think about all of that when you're writing a grant, because that's so important to share with the potential grantor. Budget. If they give you a budget, please follow the template. There's a reason why that template has been given. If there are certain categories, try and ensure that you are hitting those categories. And most importantly, I'm going to say, cover all of your needs, including marketing. So what I discovered when I was a foundation director is that we gave a grant once to a very large healthcare organization in New Jersey. They had a wonderful, wonderful exercise program. And we would give 50% at the beginning of the grant, 25% 6 months in, and the balance at the end. After the first 6 months, I went to them and there were 4 people in the program, which was a little bit surprising to me and to them. And I said, well, how are you sharing this wonderful program that you're offering for free to the public? And they hadn't actually thought about their marketing. They said, well, word of mouth. So when we have a great program, people need to know about it. So think, how are you going to get that message out? Do you need flyers? Do you need leaflets? Do you need to put some advertising somewhere? That's all part of your cost. Think about the time and cost of your staff fulfilling a particular program. Maybe there's additional costs that need to be included. Do you need to bring in ancillary staff to fulfill the needs? So with the food insecurity work that I'm doing, there are stipends that we give to residents who have lived experiences in food insecurity. We want them to step in. We want them to give advice on what we're doing, give input on potential programs, be trained to go out as community ambassadors. They deserve to be paid for that. So we want to give them stipends. So that too needs to be included in your costs. And then think about, what are those costs? Is it for operating, general operating, only programmatic expenses? Really consider why we're asking for that money. We're nearly there. So keep breathing, which I'm going to also try to do. One of the things we're talking about is reporting requirements. So writing a grant takes X number of hours, but we also have to think about reporting requirements. Who's going to do this? This is also a little bit time consuming. Who's going to look back and write some of the answers to the reporting needs? There actually is a trend now in grant making of lessening those reporting requirements. Grantors are realizing it's quite a heavy burden, especially on smaller organizations, to start writing and reporting on what we're doing. So maybe some of them are not as strict now. In fact, some organizations are actually asking for no reports anymore. And I think if that's the case, it would just be nice to maybe do a little bit of an update towards the end of a grant. But think about who will do this. And please have a calendar of milestones and deadlines. Maybe you have to report quarterly, half yearly, at the end of the year. And what are you reporting on? If you miss a deadline or a deliverable or a milestone, for goodness sake, talk to the funder and be transparent. when this program that I shared, the exercise program, wasn't working, we talked about ways in which to turn the boat around. Sometimes we have a great idea, we have a great program, and sometimes when it's put into practice, it doesn't work, or we need to alter or reassess or change course. We need to do that with a funder's agreement. Don't blindside that funder who has given you X thousand dollars to do X. And yet when you started following X, you realize actually we need to tweak it a bit. It needs to become Y. Talk to the funder. I'm sure that they will, if it's sound and reasonable to take a different action, a different way, I think that they will continue to fund you. I think it's highly unlikely you will lose funding, but it's a lot worse if the funder at the end of the grant period realizes that you didn't fulfill what you had promised. And my last piece here is become a person and treat the funder like a person. Keep in touch, get to know them, develop these relationships. These hopefully are long-lasting relationships. You don't just want to go for one grant, you'd like to go for several. I like to send a holiday card. Could be a call. Some of these folks are very busy, depends on your relationship. Check in with them. But it's so important. Do not be a transactional partner with your grantor. Make sure they're with you. They're coming along with you. They're a partner with you. They too want to make a difference in the community. Try and do that hand in hand with your grantor. They are just people, just like us, no matter what our titles are and no matter what organization we work for. And ultimately, we're all aiming for the same cause and outcome. And one last piece before we open it up to questions, are collaborations and writing in a collaborative setting. So I was just talking to one of the council members who supports nonprofits as they step forward to apply for grants. Sometimes as a funder, you actually look a lot stronger if you're working in collaboration. Each of us separately can do incredible and amazing things. But when we join together in a group, it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, right? We put one piece in, but there are other pieces. And an issue is not a simple issue. Food insecurity is not about just food and access to food. As I say, it touches on health. It touches on workforce development. It touches on building community, systemic racism. There are so many issues. So if we can pull in the different pieces and work collaboratively, I think you actually come across as stronger, potentially more sustainable, reliable, predictable, and with a greater chance to succeed. So I think that that's something that you really need to consider when you're applying for a grant. Can I collaborate with partners in the community? Also look, now there's some funding that's more community-centric. Grantors are looking to support and develop community. That also speaks to working in collaborations. Trust capital. They realize that you might need time to fulfill your goals. You may not want to be restricted to certain areas. You may want multi-year funding. So look for that trust capital, look for multi-year funding so you can continue your work. I'd love to say as a nonprofit, we can do something for a year or two and have solved the problems of the world, but sadly, that's not the case. And a very last piece, a very practical piece, is how to write a grant with multiple partners. This can be really challenging. I would recommend that you find one agency, let's say there's 3 or 4 of you, one agency where it truly makes sense that they are the lead, that they would be the best agency to step forward. And then the other agencies support them and support the work with their programs. Have real clarity about the program you want to do collaboratively and how you're going to work together. Maybe the initial proposal comes from the lead, and then they will ask others to add in their piece that touches the program or programs. As we're doing that, I'm going to talk to you about being mindful. When somebody sends you a paragraph and says, this is what I feel our program is and how it fits in, As you're looking at it and amending it in Word, be very careful not to have red lines through somebody's writing. They've spent time preparing that wording. And yes, indeed, it may need to be changed or deleted, but perhaps start with a comment and then have a meeting. Once everybody has added in their comments, meet together, go through the document and work as a collaborative team to come up with the best proposal possible. But ultimately, like anything, you have a final decision maker, that lead, somebody who is going to make the decision on the grant, and everybody feels very comfortable and safe and trusting in that space. So that is the end of my slides. I want to thank you. Please feel free to take a screenshot of this, which gives you my contact information. And my question to you all is, how can I help you? I don't know if there are questions or thoughts or concerns. Every grant's different, every organization's different, but please let me know how I can help you. And thank you again for your time and for the moments of breathing together.
All right. That was really, really great, Jocelyn. Thank you so much. Am I on? Yep, I'm on. Sorry, this Zoom thing is a little bit new of experience. Really great. I will say, I want to touch on a couple of points. The breathing exercises for me in particular was pretty helpful and actually very unique way to start off. I never actually started off a presentation with breathing exercises, so I found that very helpful. Really calmed my nerves and helped me get into the spirit of your speech. So thank you for that. A couple other points I found engaging is finding your piece on finding the right grant. It really is somewhat of a science, right? Not every grant is right for every organization. I thought you had some really key topics and key points in there about what the not-for-profit organization is trying to accomplish, and finding those correct grants to fit their profile. There was one thing, there's many things I learned today, but one of the things I didn't know about was the resource you gave us all. So thank you for this, the Candid Foundation directory. I was trying to check it out while I was on, and then I realized I was not paying enough attention, so I decided to check it out, that I'll check it out afterwards. But a really good tidbit of information to help all our constituents and attendees find certain grants that will fit in their criteria. I did see some other folks also added some additional resources in the chat, so I want to thank everybody who did that. That was very helpful, and yet another resource and benefit of these types of talks. The other item that I kind of took from this was it does take time, so be selective. So again, going hand in hand with finding the right grant. Being selective, one of the things that really resonated with me is the dollar value of the grant and the amount of time it might take to get that. That is a general business context that doesn't apply just to not-for-profits. It's true in just about every business. So I thought that was pretty helpful. I also thought being specific. I have found when I've reviewed some of my clients' grants that they're successful with the ones that are very specific, and they're less successful with the ones that are, templates and boilerplate. A couple other ones before I turn it over. Existing relationships, I thought was an interesting concept. Developing existing relationships with funders are much, much easier than developing cold ones. Also true in any business, not just in attempting to get grants. And evaluating your successes and failures with using metrics. Again, metrics are always a great way to evaluate any process. So again, also common to all businesses. And then the biggest one I felt was covering all your needs from a cost standpoint. So when you talked about marketing, your marketing costs and all these other things that sometimes get left out of grants or not really considered when you're going out and applying for these grants, making sure that the grant actually does cover all of your costs, both services and administration. So I just wanted to highlight some of those key points. And I guess was wondering if we had any questions. I have not, I did not notice any.
We've got a few. So I'm keeping track. So the first one is, Jocelyn, can you talk a little bit more about meeting grantors and needs versus mission drift?
Oh, yeah, they are.
Meeting grantors' needs versus mission
drift.
So I'm actually not, truthfully, I'm not quite sure what is meant by mission drift. But I'm going to, I think it's both important to look at the mission of both yourself and the grantor, and what are they and you trying to do and achieve. And I would say that fits into the needs as well of that grantor. If I don't know who asked the question, if there is some clarification around that, I'd appreciate that. I don't want to answer and give the wrong answer. I think ultimately, hopefully, you know your own mission and what your needs are, what you're trying to do. And as you look at the grantor, that's the same thing. So for example, a corporation, they may be looking for a number of things. They may be looking for employee engagement and volunteer opportunities. They may want to expand within the communities that they serve. So banks, for example, will often say, I'm in these 5 counties and this is where I really want to focus. They may tie into community development in the financial sector, because again, let's say for a bank, that's important to them. That's going to support their business. They're never going to, quite honestly, just be philanthropic for the sake of being philanthropic. It's always a two-way street. As the grantee, you're wanting to see, what does the grantor want and need? How can I fulfill their needs? And ultimately, by fulfilling their needs, you will therefore fulfill yours. So I think, again, it's those synergies and those lines. I think both needs and the mission, if I'm answering that question correctly, are both paramount and key.
This is Nicole. I asked the question. The question's more mission drift. I'm referring to, like, when you look at a grant and you see what they're funding, making sure that you're not twisting yourself into a pretzel to fit their funding, versus like, is this really a good match for what I do in my organization, what my mission is? Like, there's a tendency sometimes to, like, you see an opportunity, or you have that personal connection. You're like, how can I make my program look like it fits? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I think that's so key, actually, Nicole. Thank you for asking that. I don't think we should be, if we're a burger bun, let's not try to be a pretzel, because if we try to being a pretzel, I would say 9 times out of 10, the grantor sees that. Either whether the way that you're writing the proposal, due diligence questions, as they see a program evolving, the last thing you want to do is just not be authentic and transparent. And as much as we want funding, I really believe there's enough sources out there that truly create synergy. We are who we are as organizations. And quite honestly, if we don't focus in on what we do best, then we become, in a way, a jack of all trades and master of none. The Red Cross, when I joined them, went from an organization that pretty much sat in many spaces, including shelters and domestic violence shelters and medical appointments, as well as disaster and blood and veterans, etc. When I joined, they really honed into what were they really, really good at. And they were good at 5 specific things, and ultimately then transitioned their other programs and what they did to other organizations that truly sat in those spaces. So I think sometimes it's really important as an organization to truly sit and reflect and be honest about who we are, what do we do, and then look out and say, who is that partner? Because ultimately you're creating partnerships, long-lasting relationships that are so key for everybody to succeed, both from the grantor and the grantee's perspective.
So there's another question in the chat. What would you suggest for stating the need for scholarships for university students in proposals other than their financial need?
So I think I'd look at who is the student that we're talking about. Is there a personal story that you can share? Yes, they clearly have a financial need, but maybe there are some really key pieces to what this student has done, some things that they're passionate about, impacts they've had on the community, why they want to pursue this particular profession, career, course. And really, I would say present that student as a really all-round person. What are their hobbies? What are their likes? What do they love to do? And maybe what are their dreams? I think often we forget our own dreams. So I think really sharing the dreams of that student as well, so that when somebody thinks about giving a scholarship, it's not just to do this particular course, but you're actually supporting an individual and really touching and changing their lives, perhaps sometimes saving their lives too in a way. So I think that really passionate piece, that really human piece, and being very authentic about who that child is and why it's so important that somebody steps up and supports scholarships. And perhaps there's a greater need in the community for those kind of skill sets. So as that child, those folks go through school, what is the outcome? Are we missing people in healthcare? Do we need people in the advocacy space? So again, what needs are they fulfilling long term that really align, I think, again, with your potential funders?
All right, those were great questions. If nobody has any other questions, I think we're coming up against the time, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time and also leave us some time for the breakout networking sessions. Hopefully some of you or most of you can stay for that piece of it. But I also would like to thank Jocelyn. Seeing no further questions, I'd also like to thank Jocelyn for all of the information you were able to share with us. It was very insightful. And thank you for fielding the couple of questions. We did provide your information in the chat. Of course, we're also going to provide a copy of this recording. So I guess I would encourage everybody, if they did not feel they had enough time to ask their questions and get them answered today, that they can reach out to you and hopefully do some work with you in the future.
Well, thank you again so much, NJBIA and everybody that's here today. And please, if nothing else, remember to breathe. If you did those breathings, take a minute in the morning, lunchtime and evening, you've already got 3 minutes of mindful breathing. And honestly, you can either go to grant writing or whatever else you're doing in a much more peaceful, hopefully clarity way and mindful way. So thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Very helpful. And speakers like you do help make these presentations fruitful and helpful for everyone else. So again, many thanks. Some more housekeeping. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 20th. So right around the corner. It's amazing how fast 2023 is going, as far as at least that's how I feel. In that meeting, we'll be discussing how to build a relationship with your local bank and how they can help you make your organization grow. We'll have a special guest, Roxanne Cameo of Lakeland Bank. So please stay tuned to our mailings and emails and for more information on that. Also, I'd like to send one more quick thank you to our partners. So this is a repeat list, but again, without our partners, our sponsors and partners, we can't make this happen. So again, I'll give one more shout out to the Association Member Trust, DCM Associates, Focus New Jersey, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Nisavacia, the NJBIA HR Support Center, the New Jersey Business Magazine, and of course, New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group, who is a faithful and long-term sponsor. Also, I'll also offer everybody out here, I think we still have everybody on the call. Yep, great. If you think you'd like to be a speaker and have some information to share that would be of value to our not-for-profit listeners, we would, of course, welcome any applications. We can talk about topics. We are currently trying to fill out the rest of our program year. So again, as I said, keep on the lookout for our mailings. And if you would like to participate in a speaker role, that would be something we would very much be interested in. And with that, I talked a little bit about the breakout sessions, the marketing sessions for networking. So I'll let Betty put us into the breakout. More housekeeping. If you can't stay for the networking, now's a good time to jump off. Our breakout rooms, we're trying to, we do try to have 5 to 6 people in each breakout to see if we can, get more one-on-one contact and direction. I know virtual is a little bit difficult, but the technology really does make it possible. And as we put you into these breakout rooms, we would like you to, think of questions and conversation starters to get the networking going. So, here it's in these breakout sessions. You can try to get to know each other. Also, put your contact information into the chat feature of the Zoom so that we can share the information, because nobody uses business cards anymore. And again, we'll not be returning back to this main room. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all in the breakout rooms.
Perfect, Joe. Thank you. And we have